Hello everyone, welcome to another growth chat by Mailmodo. Today we have a very special guest, Chad White. Chad is the head of research at Oracle Research Oracle Marketing Consulting. He has written more than 3,000 articles related to email marketing. He is one of the person whose articles I really love myself, and I get to learn a lot myself. He is also the author of Email Marketing Rules. And for the same book, he has written three versions already. He was also the email marketing thought leader of the year for 2018 by Email Experience Council. Welcome, Chad. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So, I'm really great to have you here, Chad. I have been reading your articles, learning a lot from you. Your articles are uh, very inspiring and thoughtful. How did you get into email marketing?
Yeah, so I'm actually a journalist by training. I have a master's in journalism from New York University, and I was working as a journalist for a number of years. And I worked at Condé Nast, a big magazine publisher, and with Dow Jones. And during that time, I was primarily covering retailers. And one of the things we did to get leads for stories is that we signed up for all the retailers' email marketing campaigns because they would announce, uh, new functionality for their website and new services for their stores, and that was sort of my first, introduction really to email marketing, and sort of the pivotal moment for me after kind of years of using email in that way. My brother, who's 2 years older than me, started a blog, and as a younger competitive brother, I'm sure there's lots of people that can relate. I had the notion that, well, geez, if my brother can launch a blog, well, certainly I can too. And I thought about what it was that I would want to blog about, and landed on, tracking the email campaigns of the largest retailers. That sounded like interesting. It was something I was kind of already doing as part of my job anyway. So I thought I would apply more rigor to that and just blog every day about what I was seeing in my inbox. And that, I think, was when I really first legitimately got into the email marketing industry. And that was back in 2006. And very shortly thereafter, left journalism, got into email marketing full time with the Email Experience Council. And then on from there, I joined an email marketing agency, and the rest is sort of history. So I mean, kind of fell into email marketing.
Yeah, it has been a really like long experience as well, and switching from journalism to email marketing, and that you have written this book as well. Can you tell us more about the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started writing the book probably back in like 2011. And around that time, there was just a lot of talk about kind of disparaging best practices. And there were people saying that, well, like hey, the best practice is the practice that's best for your company.
Hmm.
And, people really just trying to kind of slam best practices and say that, oh, if everybody follows best practices, then everyone's kind of like the same, doing the same thing, or you're not gonna be standing out. You're gonna look like everybody else. And I thought that was just kind of ridiculous. That, you know, in my mind, best practices are sort of like, you know, collective wisdom, or kind of like the group think of what you should do or shouldn't do. And so I started to think like, all right, what are all the best practices that I could write down? And that was sort of the genesis of the book. The first edition of Email Marketing Rules was literally 120 rules, and it was, like a short one sentence rule, and then some explanation about, you know how to use that rule and why that rule is the way that it is. And I really tried to focus, not so much on like the execution, because the execution can absolutely change. I mean, there's very little about coding in email marketing rules in any of the
Yeah.
editions, because the coding changes constantly, right? So that's the level of detail I don't get into. That's really the realm of blog posts, for that kind of information. But I really tried to go like one level deeper to like, what's the why? Why do you do this? And like sort of laying out, all of the um, all of the sort of fundamental rules that you should really follow, and then your execution on that usually gives you quite a bit of freedom to play. This idea that like best practices lead to sameness, I think, is really kind of ridiculous. It's kind of like saying every car is the same, because every car has a steering wheel and four wheels and seats and like, and a way to, move the car backward and forward. Like, it's, cars are all incredibly different, and,
Yeah.
and they follow sort of fundamental best practices around, what makes a sound vehicle, right? So,
Yeah.
sort of applying the same kind of logic to the email marketing field. And so the first edition had 120 rules, and now the third edition is up to 150 rules. And beyond the rules, there's additional chapters that sort of like give you like the bigger picture about how all these rules kind of fit together, and kind of understanding bigger concepts like deliverability. So the rules help kind of break things down,
Hmm.
and the additional chapters help sort of give you the bigger picture. So it's been a lot of fun to write these books, and it's a kind of a combination of two things, in terms of like the different generations of the different editions of the book. It's one that I'm learning more all the time, which is great. Again, as a journalist by training, like that's one of the things I love about email marketing. It's constantly changing and evolving, and there's nice new little wrinkles, and sometimes really giant wrinkles like MPP. But I love the fact that it's constantly changing, and we have to constantly evolve. And so the different editions of the book reflect those changes, plus the fact that I'm constantly learning. So it's a combination of the two. Yeah. So now in its third edition.
Yeah, congratulations on the third edition. And the
Thank you.
audience, everybody, if you want to improve your email marketing, this book is a must read by Chad. Chad, can you tell us something about your work as well at Oracle? What are you doing currently? What are you working on?
Yeah, so I'm the head of research for Oracle Marketing Consulting, and we're a group of about 500 digital marketing consultants inside of Oracle. We're a digital marketing agency that's sort of nested inside of Oracle, and
Hmm.
we help our clients really with kind of overcome any obstacle they have ahead of them, kind of seize any opportunity. And we certainly do a lot of work in the email marketing sphere, in terms of design and coding and strategy and analytics, deliverability, automation, those kinds of things. But we also do web and SMS and push and social media marketing, but certainly a pretty heavy focus on email marketing. That's definitely our home base. And it's great. We have primarily like really large brands, really large senders. That's what Oracle's specialty is. And certainly within the consulting group, those are the folks that we are primarily assisting. So we have some really great, global brands, national brands, a lot of complexity. And we have tons of just really smart people. You were saying before that you really enjoyed reading my articles, and I'm in a very fortunate position in that I have tons of smart people around me that can constantly sort of ping and pick their brains. So definitely, when you're reading something from me and you're like, wow, that's super helpful. It's partially me sort of standing on the shoulders of all those other people here at Oracle Marketing Consulting. So many smart people. But yeah, so my job is sort of twofold. One, I help with thought leadership and points of view to help our clients. Our clients are constantly coming to us with questions, a lot of questions that other folks have as well. So certainly when mail privacy protection was introduced, our clients were like, what does this mean? And what should we be
Yeah.
doing? And what should we be thinking? And so we set to work coming up with a POV on what it is that is going to need to change, what's not
Yeah.
going to change. And once we had helped our clients answer these questions, and then part of my role was to share out some of that with the broader industry as well. So I have sort of like a dual facing role where a chunk of the work I do is facing inside towards our clients, and then part of me is exterior facing, which is nice. So I get both sides, but I'm always getting that connection to what our clients are concerned about and what they're thinking about.
Yeah, that's actually great to lead such a big team of smart people. And I'm sure that we are going to learn a lot from your experience today. Audience, if you have any questions related to anything related to email marketing or digital marketing, please feel free to have in the question in the comments. Chad, coming to the topic of today regarding holiday marketing, every year, uh, all the brands spend a lot of money around holiday marketing, uh, and the buzz is also very high. So why is the holiday marketing so important?
Yeah, so I mean, this is, it's not just obviously the marketing, but the season is critically important for just business, especially retailers, anybody in e-commerce. This is when they bring in just a huge chunk of their annual revenue comes in that fourth quarter, or even just during November and December. So it was already important before marketing came along, right? So marketing's job is to amplify that and in a good way, right? I always talk about how email marketing doesn't do a good job of creating demand out of nothing, but it does a really great job of amplifying existing demand. And the holiday season is a fantastic example of that, right? Tons of people are in the market to buy gifts and to buy things for themselves as well. And email marketing can amplify that and help you do even better. So email is great at amplifying existing increases in sales and revenue. And so the way that we look at the holiday season is we try to look at it actually as sort of a 4 quarters exercise. I know that we kind of everyone thinks about the holiday season as sort of being the fourth quarter, and that's when a lot of the action happens. But if you kind of back it out, we see this as sort of being like a year-long exercise for our clients. So for
Mm.
instance, in Q1, you're doing sort of like a post-mortem or a review on how your holiday season went. And then you start doing the really big things to get ready for the next holiday season, which might mean that you're doing, you're looking at your tech stack and evaluating what you might, need or not need, or changes that you might want to make, or integrations, like the really things that take a long time to do, like evaluations and to put new things into place. And then also really big things like, setting up, automations, which can take a bit of time to get off the ground. Any sort of, creative refreshes, that takes a while to do. And then, as you move through, the first part of the year, it's a lot of review, a lot of moving the big pieces. And then as you get into Q3, like we are now you're starting to kind of do like legit holiday planning, trying to get those, those big themes that you want to have, looking at the cadence that you want to have as sort of your baseline, starting to think about, how you might do targeting, and really figuring out the content planning aspects of it, which I feel like is probably the thing that people think about the most when they think about holiday planning, because the volume of campaigns goes up so significantly that that it's generally like if you were just to follow sort of your business as usual, you would get overwhelmed. So usually people really focus in on that aspect of it and how to plan ahead, how to manage that, and certainly we can talk about strategies there in more detail if you want.
Yeah, yeah. So that will be definitely helpful. But before going there, can you tell us like how does the consumer behavior changes during this period compared to the rest of the time, and
Yeah.
what are the learnings for the marketers from those behavior?
Yeah, so really the behavior of consumers sort of the first 3 quarters of the year versus the last quarter is pretty significantly different. It really, especially in November, December, that subscriber that you've been kind of getting to know all year, all of a sudden, their behavior changes pretty significantly. Their interests change pretty dramatically because of gift buying, right? And
Mm.
so you really have these sort of, you have to recognize the fact that, from January to, September, October, the behaviors of a subscriber is generally their behavior, right? They're buying primarily for themselves and for their family, for their kids. And so their behaviors are generally pretty consistent during that period of time. But then you
Mm.
get to, October, November, December, and all of a sudden their interests are really all over the place. And when you get into the fourth quarter, and again, certainly into November and December, um, I always encourage people to really kind of reset everything, because like if you shouldn't personalize based on stuff that folks did in June in your November campaigns, because it just doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense, because people's interests are going to be wildly different. So I think the big thing that you have to recognize is that like people's behaviors change really radically, and that means that that data that you've been collecting on them isn't nearly as useful. Also, because of how that holiday behavior can really change from year to year, you're kind of like resetting. And so sometimes you can do, some quick turn personalization, but it's a little bit tricky. In general, it's wise to kind of reset, go with big, broad messages. That's what a lot of retailers do, and I think that is absolutely the right approach. Try to keep it really simple, really clean. Recognize that the other big change psychologically during the holiday season is that people are super busy, right? They're juggling, their jobs, they're juggling gift buying. Here in the US, we have Thanksgiving and then followed by Christmas. So a lot of like family events, and people are just really, really busy. And so the best thing you can do during the holiday season in terms of messaging is to keep it really simple. Keep your
Mm.
designs really clean, because if people are confused or unclear about what it is that you're offering, they're going to move along. They're going to move along, and you're going to miss that opportunity. So I think, just keeping it just as succinct and clear as possible, keeping your offers, really broad, whether it's, well, certainly we see a ton of like site-wide discounts, but certainly a lot of product category discounts as well, that are more narrowed, but not, site-wide. And there's just tons of messaging like that just keep it really simple. Add that in with some branding in terms of, what it is that's unique to your brand, you know, return policies, a lot of logistical kind of things as well. It's
Mm.
just all about really clear communication, being, just really easy to understand. Because again, people are they're on the move, they're on to the next thing. And if they
Mm.
get confused at all, they generally are moving on. Now, that said, I know that one of the things that everybody always wants to know about the holiday season is they want to know how they can stand out. And I've been talking about keeping it simple. And I think that sometimes when people hear that, they think, well, I can't stand out if I'm keeping it simple. But I think the thing to recognize that, like, being simple in a way is sort of standing out, because a lot of brands, I think, do communicate, and
Mm.
like not in a bit of a clumsy way that's not very clear. So if you're the one who's being clear, then you're going to be easier to deal with than another brand who maybe
Mm.
their offer is a little bit confusing, or they're not quite sure what it is. Like it takes them too long to figure it out. So clarity does help you stand out. But I think that really kind of recognizing that uh, part of the battle has already been won by the time the holiday season arrives. If you were a good brand to receive messages from, in June and July and August, then now you've got a seat at the table for the holiday season. But if your messages weren't relevant, in June, July, and August, if they had bad experiences or didn't find value in your emails, they're going to be not really looking to you during the holiday season. They might not unsubscribe, but you're not going to have their attention as if you had done a good job before. So I think that's one of the things to really recognize, that like part of the battle for the holiday season is happening right now. If your emails right now are doing great, providing a lot of value, being really relevant, then you are queuing yourself up to have a good holiday season. I think this is one of the kind of things that's sort of fundamental to email, is that people think that, all right, if I just create one great campaign, if I create a great subject line, that's going to make this campaign a winner. And frankly, it's the last campaign that you sent that's going to have the biggest impact. Email marketing is a relationship channel. It is a permission-based channel. And so the thing that has the biggest impact on the email that you send today is the email that you sent yesterday and the day before that and the day before that. That's what creates, that momentum forward is those past experiences. And if their past experiences weren't great, then you're not going to do as well. That's why it's the sender name that has the biggest impact on whether or not an email gets opened or not the subject line. It's the relationship that's connected to the sender and those past experiences with that sender.
That is a very important message there, actually, and I'm going to tweet about it later on after this conversation. You mentioned so many things. I will discuss all those one by one. But number one question I had, like you mentioned that the data now and data during the holiday season will be very different. So what changes, like in terms of email marketing? Does the open rate change a lot? The click rate or the conversion rate change a lot? What all change in terms of the data or the metrics?
Yeah, so what people are clicking on and the things that they're opening, that changes. So if you're trying to divine what it is that they're interested in, that's where those cues are very different. So an email that an email about a certain, it's clearly about a certain kind of product that they might not have been interested in, earlier in the year, that they're suddenly opening. That change of interest signaling, that's the biggest change in the data. But in terms of the overall, sort of like if you're looking at sort of the macro numbers, engagement generally tends to do quite well during the holiday season, even though cadence is through the roof. Like, right, you're sending a lot more campaigns, but engagement tends to stay pretty steady, which is a very positive sign that email marketers in general are doing a very good job of sort of matching the interest to their cadence, right? Like that's, I mentioned earlier that, email marketing is great at sort of amplifying existing business trends, right? And amplifying interest that's already there. And so it would be very problematic if marketers sent many more messages during the holiday season and they saw their open rates and click rates tank. But that's not generally what we see. Is that we see that there's heightened interest from subscribers, and so they generally welcome the increase in messages because they're in the market to buy and they're looking for ideas, they're looking for gift guides, they're looking for discounts, they're looking for guidance. And so you tend to see the engagement rates hold pretty firm. You also tend to see the unsubscribe rates generally dip during the holiday season, which is another sign that, as much as I think some people worry about increases in volume, that generally subscribers welcome it. You want to keep a very close eye on the numbers and on the engagement and unsubscribe rates in particular. But in general, again, you're sending more volume when people are in the market, and generally speaking, subscribers welcome that because it's in line with their increased interest. So that's sort of those are the two ways that the data is changing. Sort of macro, we see that engagement holds up to higher volume, but in terms of what people are clicking on and opening in their browse behavior, post-click, that can be wildly different. And so you need to be very careful about how you use that data, to personalize emails, to send segmented emails. That's where things get a little bit dicey, and why you see a lot of brands generally kind of pull back on their personalization and segmentation efforts and send out sort of more broadcast campaigns. Now that said, in my mind, there's three things you can do to create relevant emails, right? You can personalize, you can segment, and you can automate. And automation is the star of the holiday season. So segmentation and personalization, I think, become, secondary, because again, the data is hard to use and less reliable because of these changing consumer behaviors. But automation is fantastic, so especially for retailers, e-commerce companies. So browse abandonment emails, cart abandonment emails, checkout abandonment emails. These are superstar automations for the holiday season that really perform at super high levels. So automation is one of the things that we preach really hard here at Oracle Marketing Consulting, to make sure you have those campaigns in place going into the holiday season, that you've maybe taken some time to optimize them, maybe do some A/B testing. And more so, one of the things that I think not enough brands do is to make them seasonally relevant, right? So going into those automations, seeing if there's opportunities to add in some seasonal messaging, some seasonal imagery, to really put those emails in the context of the holiday season, so that when someone abandons a cart in mid-November, you're kind of assuming that they're in holiday mode, they're probably gift buying. All right, what does that holiday shopper need to know, and what sort of image are you looking to sort of portray? And so if you put it in the context of holiday shopping, they might be interested in some type of financing. Certainly the buy now pay later thing is very big right now, so there might be really responsive to that kind of messaging. And also adding in secondary messaging about gift guides or the most popular searches on your website, giving them guidance to what are people shopping for right now, or recommendations that you have for the holiday season for gifts, or gift wrapping services, or other kinds of things that play into the holidays. That can be really powerful. Not nearly enough brands take the time to do that, and I think that's a big missed opportunity.
Yeah, yeah. You also mentioned that the best brands do holiday marketing right now. So, what are the things that companies should be doing right now?
Yeah, so yeah, absolutely. All of our brands are, all of our clients are working on planning right now.
Hmm.
And I think probably the biggest thing that they're doing is that content planning. They're really trying to kind of nail down, all right, when are we going to send campaigns? What are they going to be about? And trying to create assets now as much as possible. We have sort of like an 80% rule that we kind of shoot for. We want our brands to have like 80% of their campaigns done, or all of their campaigns 80% done, but it's the idea of like getting like almost all the way there. And we certainly recognize that some campaigns are going to be waiting for certain elements because you don't know, for instance, about supply chain issues, or you don't know what the merchandisers are going to be wanting to push. And so, but you can create like a lot of your campaign creative and the copy well ahead of time, and then you're coming. It's sort of like making a cake and then coming along at the end and putting the icing on, right? So you can bake that cake ahead of time, and then pop it in the freezer. You can thaw it out later and ice it and have it all ready to go. So like it's doing all of that prep. And it's not just about the campaigns, but also the additional assets that you might need during the holiday season. I talked about gift guides and information about financing, or store hours and other kinds of like modules that you might create that would be really keyed into the holiday season. You can start creating those right now. You can design those modules today, and that way you have them ready to go when you need them in late October or into November. And I keep saying October and November because there's definitely a lot of demand that's been pulled forward. It used to be very clear that November and December were like the holiday season. And I think even before the pandemic, but certainly during the pandemic, October, I think, is a legit member of the holiday season now.
Yeah.
Everything has gotten pulled forward, because of supply chain issues. People are are in the market to shop earlier. But they've kind of always been the National Retail Federation here in the U.S. has this really nice long-standing survey that they do. They ask people when they start shopping for the holiday season, and it's been like very steady, like the whole last decade. Somewhere around 40% of consumers said that they started shopping for holiday gifts before November 1st. And this past year, it jumped up to, I think, 49%. But so that sounds like, wow, that's a big jump. And so that's almost half of everybody that's starting to buy holiday gifts before the start of November. But again, prior to that, it was 40%, which is still a ton of people that are starting to buy gifts before November 1st. So, I think that that newest data point of 49% like seems really impressive, but when you recognize that there's a ton of people who are in the market, to buy, who have always been in the market to buy in October or even September, I think it sort of behooves everybody to really pay attention to when they start their holiday messaging, and to really, if you're not doing any holiday messaging in October, you're missing out on opportunity. You should be starting to at least have secondary messaging at that time to capture some of that early interest.
Yeah, that's definitely the point actually. So for all those people who are planning their campaigns right now, do you have some inspirations or examples or case studies that you would like to share which can help them in their campaigns for this year?
Yeah, so I've been really hammering on this idea of like being simple and clear and easy to deal with. I think those are the best kinds of messages, and I think I hope everybody has subscribed to a lot of their, not just their competitors' emails, but certainly a lot of like other brands' emails. I know I do, and have for a very long time. It's really, I think if you haven't, please do that. And it's very educational just to look through your inbox and see how other brands communicate, and start to think about who's doing it well, and like use your own gut a bit to say like, oh, what do I like here and what do I not. But I think simplicity is really the name of the game. Now, beyond that, I do think there are other opportunities to do other smart things, and I think some of my favorite campaigns have been brands that have tried to do progressive profiling during the holiday season. So progressive profiling is a fancy name for essentially doing polls or surveys or some kind of question that gets people to give you information that you can then turn around and use, generally in pretty short order. So for instance, in recent years, Sony had a great campaign where I think it was like mid to early November, they said, hey, what are you most interested in buying this holiday season? Are you interested in buying a PlayStation, a new TV? And then they had I think they had 6 different product categories that they asked about. And they wanted to know, which of these 6 product categories were you interested in buying in for this holiday season? And the promise was that, hey, if you tell us, we'll send you a great offer on Black Friday. And so like a very straightforward campaign, didn't get too complicated. It was one question: which of these 6 categories are you the most interested in? And when you clicked on one of the 6 categories, it said, great, we'll send you a fantastic deal on Black Friday. They did exactly that. I think they even used the exact same product category image in that Black Friday email that they used in the progressive profiling campaign to kind of connect those two, which was nice. And it was just a very straightforward, here's X% off this product category. I think that that's really nice. Again, I talk about how interests and gift buying really change, from year to year. And so, Sony could send out that same campaign every year and they would get different results. Now, I'm sure that they didn't get like a gazillion clicks on that. But the nice thing about a campaign like that is that it's very straightforward, and it's kind of like it's sort of like money in the bank, right? The folks who take the time to select their product category that already know what they're most likely to buy, the conversion rate on that Black Friday email for those folks that got those segmented campaigns was probably through the roof, right? Because it was people who took the time to indicate what category they were interested in, and so they already knew or had a pretty good idea of what they wanted to deal on. So I bet those conversion rates are just incredibly high. Now, it was on a much smaller audience, but getting a really nice conversion rate on even a relatively small audience is pretty easy. And like those campaigns, the way that Sony had set it up was not very difficult to do. It was a very, again, simple, straightforward campaign. That Black Friday messaging was very straightforward. Again, you told me you wanted X, here's X. Like, it's just a very nice, clean communication. So I think those have been some of my favorites, because I feel like there's a lot of opportunities there to have that kind of dialogue. I'm a big fan of thinking of email marketing as a dialogue, of this sort of back and forth where I talk about X, and my subscriber indicates whether they're interested in hearing more about X by opening, clicking, and taking other types of behaviors, other types of actions. And then I continue the conversation in subsequent emails, and we sort of refine that back and forth over time. Of course, it's a very sort of disembodied conversation and a bit fragmented over time, but there's this very clear give and take. And brands that ignore those signals of interest tend to struggle and not really achieve nearly as much as they could achieve otherwise.
Yeah, so that was a very interesting idea of like progressive profiling, right? Like, it is not just for like brand like Sony, but even for a smaller brand, they would like to know what their users want and just serve them what they want, and your revenue will be increased. There's a question by the audience chat. I will like to put it here. Do people check emails at the time of festive holidays?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, so not okay. So during holidays itself, generally not so much. Here in the U.S., we celebrate Thanksgiving, and over the years, there's been a lot of sort of back and forth about whether or not that is or isn't a good time to be promoting sales and sending emails. And I think right now we're sort of at the point where the pendulum is swinging back towards sort of not sending as many campaigns during Thanksgiving, which is a big family time for most Americans. But certainly there's still quite a bit of messaging that goes out, and the return on those messages is still very, very high. So the thinking is sort of changing, but it's almost more of like a PR kind of consideration versus a monetary consideration, because those emails that are sent on Thanksgiving still do tend to perform really, really, really well. But that said, email campaigns that are sent on Christmas Day do not do well at all. So it really kind of depends. Thanksgiving is a little bit of a special animal here, but certainly Christmas is a day when campaigns do not do well at all, and Christmas Eve as well, not so great, but it does a little bit better than Christmas Day.
Yeah, I got another question actually, and I think it is a very good question. Is there a way I can do A/B testing my holiday campaign before the festival actually arrives? So you're talking about the planning much before the actual holidays. So I think this is related to that.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what kind of A/B test you're looking to do. So so we talk about A/B testing as there's sort of like two camps of A/B testing. There's testing to learn, and there's testing to win. And testing to win is when you're testing something that only really applies to the particular campaign that you're sending. Whatever you're testing, you couldn't test that on another campaign because it's just very specific to that particular campaign. And that's the kind of stuff you're not going to be able to A/B test ahead of time. But certainly A/B testing should absolutely be part of your holiday plans. You should be coming up with, hey, here are the different things I want to A/B test, whether it's subject lines, whether it's hero images, whether it's call to action language. Absolutely have that be part of your planning, but the focus there should be on tests that are about testing to win. Now, right now, today, you can start planning testing to learn. And testing to learn is a way of doing testing that you can apply those learnings to future campaigns. So, in general, do my subscribers respond better to a blue CTA button versus a green one? Or, do they prefer lifestyle images versus, product detail images, or things like that, that's kind of speak in general to the preferences of your subscribers. So testing to learn, you can do that today, and that will definitely help you send better campaigns this holiday season. But the testing to win, those types of tests, you'll want to plan those out to run those during festivals and celebrations.
Really interesting. Another question from Nupur. How do you find the best time to send emails during holidays? Is using the non-holiday days data as a benchmark to send email a good practice?
So that's a good question. I think that I don't actually know the answer to this 100%, but I would be surprised if there was significant variance in people's inbox behaviors. I would think that, as much as I've talked about how people are very different people during the holiday season versus prior, I don't think that these behaviors change all that much. So again, with the caveat of certain days it being very different, I don't think that it changes so much. So here at Oracle, we're big fans of send time optimization. I think that's fantastic. I hope everyone is doing that or looking at doing that. And it's essentially what that does is it uses the historical open and click time behaviors to optimize when a campaign should be sent to somebody. So you want to send it when they're most likely to be in the inbox. Now, the caveat to that is that send time optimization is not appropriate for every single campaign that you send. It's just not, because sometimes you need to set boundaries. Sometimes a campaign that you're sending ties into operational needs that you might have, or some other types of timing issues. And the example I always use, which I'm sure you'll have an analog wherever you are in the world, is that here in America on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, a lot of retailers advertise special deals in their stores, and the stores tend to open very early, sometimes 6 a.m., 7 a.m., very early in the morning. And so brands that are sending campaigns to promote their Black Friday offers tend to send them at 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m., ahead of when their stores are opening, to catch people before they head out to stores to stand in line to get into the store, and maybe even try to get them to change their mind about where it is that they thought they would go, to get them to change their destination. So that's a case where you wouldn't use STO for that, because you want to catch people at a particular time when they're forming their plans before they head out the door to go to whatever store they're going to go to or begin their shopping for the day.
So I was going to ask this question, but Zishan has already asked in the comments, is basically how do we differentiate ourselves from the crowd? You mentioned keep it simple, but do you have some examples of brand doing it very in a way that they stand out very well?
Yeah, so I don't want to sound like a broken record, but simplicity really does win during the holiday season. Now, there are some things you can do. So I remember a brand that on Black Friday used reverse text. So instead of white text on dark text on a light background. They flipped it so that it was, light text on a very dark background to, kind of riff off of Black Friday. I thought that campaign really stood out because you don't see a lot of reverse text. So you can do some things like that, but again, you won't be sad if you keep things simple and very clear and easy to engage with. That really is that's half of the battle right there, and the rest of it is being relevant going into the holiday season. Again, I think we obsess a little bit too much about standing out when we should be looking to build a strong relationship going into the holiday season. That's how you really win. It's having a strong relationship going into the holiday season, having demonstrated that you are a valuable, partner, a valuable brand for them, and that way they're already thinking about you going into the holiday season versus you trying to do something where you shout and wave your arms in the inbox rather than coming forward and just being there ready to help them. I know it's not like the sexiest answer, but I think that's the honest truth about how it works.
Yeah, definitely. There's no one answer as well, or like keeping it simple is probably the best answer to most of the optimization question. Chad, like we are now about near the end of the conversation. One question that I had in mind was like, how do we measure this if our holiday campaign has been successful? Like that there will be definitely a revenue increase because it is holiday, but whether as a marketer we have done something really well, how do we measure that?
Yeah, you should definitely, like, ahead of going into the holiday season, have thought
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
exactly, how are we going to measure ourselves? Because that should inform the types of campaigns that you create and the CTAs that you have. And it's going to be potentially different for brands. There's going to be some variation, but generally speaking, for retailers and e-commerce brands, it all boils down to revenue. We certainly see, some risk taking because of that, because of the heavy focus on revenue. Sometimes we see audiences that are expanded a little bit too much, which can cause issues. But most of the time, those issues tend to show up in January and not spoil the holiday season. But yeah, you should definitely know ahead of time what it is you are trying to do. What are the business goals? And I think
Hmm.
one of the things that's tricky there for a lot of brands is that a lot of brands don't always have great visibility into how email marketing affects their subscribers and their customers. So a lot of times marketers only measure what I call the golden path. So it's, I send an email, the recipient reads the subject line and opens the email, and then they read the body content, and then they click through, and then they read the landing page copy and navigate around and convert. That's great. That's fantastic. We love for everybody to do that. And a very, I think, slim majority of people actually do that. It's great that those people follow the golden path, but people are just weird. So some people receive an email, they'll read the subject line, they won't open the email at all, but the subject line and the sender name reminds them that they need to go to that brand store. And so they close their laptop, hop in their car, and go to the store and buy something. And it's, for most brands, pretty difficult to connect those dots. But we know that email marketing does that. And
Yeah.
there's plenty of other folks that get an email and they'll open up the email and they'll see what the body content's all about, and then they'll open a browser window, type in the URL of the brand and go direct that way, or they'll tell their partner, and their partner will go to the store or go to the website, and that also is very, very difficult to track. So the reason why I bring this up is because I think a lot of brands are realizing just how tricky this is to connect those dots and how big their blind spots are. Last year and the year before have really sort of been testaments to this, because in 2020, because of the pandemic, here in the US, and I'm assuming in other parts of the world too, there was a massive surge in e-commerce. And that was great for email marketers because more people stuck to the golden path, right? They got those emails, they didn't go to the store. So instead they clicked through that email, and it was very easy to connect the dots from email marketing revenue, that was influenced by email. It was very easy to connect those dots. And then last year, pandemic concerns waned, more people went back to stores, and in general, for a lot of brands, they saw their email marketing revenue decline. But that decline was almost entirely due to the fact that their shoppers, their email subscribers, went to the store more. That is absolutely something you would want them to do. If they want to go and shop at your store instead of clicking through your email and buying on your website, you absolutely want them to do that. Holiday revenue was up, I think it was like 17% year over year here in the US. So, holiday revenue was up a lot last year. Helped along by inflation for sure, but certainly the revenue was up. And so the fact that email marketing revenue for a lot of brands was down caused a lot of concern that didn't need to be there. And it was all because they had very poor visibility into how email marketing campaigns were influencing people to go to stores and to shop, and they just couldn't connect those dots. And so I think a lot of brands are realizing that there's this influence that they are not accounting for. And so it makes it more difficult for them to measure their success, to budget appropriately, and to invest in channels appropriately, and to understand their customer in a way that they need to. And so we've seen a lot of interest in customer data platforms, CDPs, in the past year, and that's part of this effort to try to connect those dots. So that's why I mentioned the golden path, and how you measure things really makes a big difference. But there are a lot of sort of structural issues that do make it very challenging for a lot of brands to be able to accurately measure what their email marketing campaigns are really doing. Because if you're just measuring the direct email marketing revenue, you're in general probably missing 40 to 50% of the influence that your campaigns are having if you're like a multi-channel brand where people can buy from somewhere else other than your website. If you're a direct-to-consumer brand where everybody buys from your website, your data is probably pretty sound. But if you have stores, especially a lot of them, or other fulfillment avenues, you're probably not seeing everything that's really going on in terms of your email marketing influence.
Yeah. I will take one last question from the audience. So Asma asked, how can you leverage holiday campaigns impact post the holidays?
That's a great question. So one of the awesome things about email marketing during the holiday season is that a ton of seasonal shoppers want to sign up for email. And I hope that everybody's thinking about these seasonal shoppers in a good way, right? I feel like you want to meet people where they're at, right? And you want to fulfill their expectations and not get too greedy about it, right? So if someone just wants to come in and give you money during the holiday season and then go away and come back next holiday season, there's nothing wrong with that. I would take that. But there are opportunities there to try to extend that relationship that starts during the holiday season. So there's certainly opportunities towards the tail end of the holiday season to continue to demonstrate value. Maybe that's a great time to start running some, if you have a preference center, to run a preference center update, or to do other kinds of progressive profiling that kind of look ahead to what folks might be doing, in January, February, going into the spring. So, trying to hold on to people, really paying attention, I think, to fatigue. And, we certainly see a lot of folks after the holiday season, which was like a very high burn situation where there's a lot of heavy frequency, we see a lot of brands dial back significantly on email frequency in early January to try to kind of reset the relationship, to kind of show, hey, look, during the rest of the year, we don't message nearly as frequently. Maybe you want to stay on. We're not going to be in your face, constantly, because you're not in the market in the same way that you were, during the holiday season. So there are absolutely some opportunities to try to keep people on board. Use your unsubscribe process to try to convince people to stay on, try to set expectations about what they'll get, in the months ahead, sort of what they'll be, missing out on. Again, if you have a preference center, especially one that allows people to opt down to receive emails less frequently, we find that a lot of brands are happy, a lot of consumers are happy to take advantage of that. And that's great because it keeps that line of communication open, even if you're not able to message them as frequently. And another sort of new way of preserving that subscriber relationship is the email snooze. So the snooze functionality, which your provider may or may not offer, allows you to essentially suppress emails to someone who indicates this for a period of time, whether it's a couple of weeks or maybe a month, or possibly even more than a month, although it starts to get a little bit dicier the longer that you snooze someone. But that's something we see used during the end of the holiday season, when people are like, whoa, okay, I'm done with my holiday shopping. I don't need to get all these emails anymore. I'd like to just snooze my subscription until the new year. And that's a great way of indicating that, hey, look, subscriber, you're in control. We're listening to you. We're here to serve you. If you say you're done, we're going to respect that, and we'll start sending you, campaigns again in the new year, and we'll pick up from there. And we've certainly seen the email snooze, I think, used in a very empathetic way around Mother's Day and Father's Day, which is nice for folks that have lost parents and don't like the reminders that Father's Day and Mother's Day bring of their loss. So if you're not using the email snooze functionality, the holiday season, I think, is really where it started. That's where that functionality started. It's a really nice way to kind of preserve folks and stop them from churning out because they're done with their holiday shopping.
Yeah, that's a very interesting idea to snooze the email. Like, it is about understanding the users well and caring about them.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
we are almost at the end of the session, Chad. One last question: if you have any pointers uh, on the mistakes people make during the holiday season that they can avoid if they start planning right now, what will be the top three according to you?
Oh, geez. All right. So top 3 mistakes. Yeah, I definitely think that, I talked about automations. I think not having your automations, nicely tuned, hopefully with some seasonal messaging in there, I think that is a missed opportunity, a big one. To kind of go back to basics, I think making sure that you took the time to QA everything. Again, I think this is one of the reasons why it really pays to keep, this is like yet another reason why it pays to keep messaging simple during the holiday season, is because there's such an increased volume. It does make QAing your emails way easier to make sure that, okay, look, I've got the right images in there, I've got the right CTAs, I've got the right offer. Those things can change during the holiday season, depending on what's going on in other departments, availability of products. So I think that's another area where you want to make sure you're avoiding mistakes, is making sure you do that, build in some time to do that QA and make sure that you're not sending out something that you shouldn't be sending out, with an incorrect offer. And in terms of a third one, another mistake I think would, not be knowing what you want to achieve in terms of different performance numbers. we talked about, making sure that you need to know what your goals are. I think going a step further is knowing what you're going to do if you don't hit your numbers, or if certain numbers become elevated that are bad. So like, what will you do if your sales and your revenue aren't hitting where you wanted them to be? Are you going to send out additional campaigns? Are you going to loosen segmentation? Are you going to send, an additional segmented campaign that's maybe narrower? What are you going to do? And if your unsubscribe rate goes up, or your spam complaint rate goes up, or your hard bounces go up, what are you going to do? Like, do you have a contingency plan for how you're going to adjust if those negative numbers go up? So I think that's another mistake that folks should definitely try to avoid, is don't wait until those things happen to then start to have those conversations about, oh, what are we going to do now? Because those decisions aren't going to be nearly as good, in the heat of the moment, versus having at least, some kind of a basic plan roughed out. All right, if our numbers go up X amount, what do we do? And that's a great way of also kind of holding executives to account, because they might say like, oh, geez, this number has gone up by X%. We need to do something. And you could say, oh, wait, look, we talked about this, months ago, and we don't think it's a problem until it gets to Y%. And therefore, we're not going to do anything just yet, and like try to like kind of talk back, any kind of knee-jerk reactions that might have unintended consequences on how campaigns play out going forward. So the more you can sort of like gameplay and talk that stuff out, that'll help you avoid making really rash decisions under pressure.
Yeah, thanks, Chad. Like, this was a very informative and useful session. There was a lot to learn. Uh, though the lessons were discussion was more around the holiday marketing, but the lessons were uh, true, like across campaigns, across channels as well. And on the behalf of the audience and everyone here at MailModo, I really thank you for the time you provided. Also, thank you, audience, for joining us today. Thanks, Chad, again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had fun.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. I will end the broadcast now.